Okay, Hayom Yom Rishon B'Shabbos. Today is Sunday, Daled Iyar. Now I heard once by Yid that the Rebbe once started a Sikha. The occasion at this juncture is not important. The Rebbe once started a Sikha with the following words: Ich hab doch lieb zu kriechen in enge Erter. Which means in English, I love to creep into narrow crevices. Which is another way of saying I like to get myself into trouble. Well, I'm not the Rebbe, but ich hab lieb zu kriechen in enge Erter. The topic that I chose for tonight is probably the worst that anybody could choose. Because it opens up a can of worms, literally. Or whatever, a can of demons. But that's exactly why I'm teaching it to you. We'll see what happens over the course. If you look through the 13 pages you have in front of you, almost all of them, without exception, are Kabbalah. Or basically very Kabbalah disposed. The Ramban is Kabbalah. Even the Chumash is mostly Kabbalah. But let's first set the stage. This week, of course, we read Achrie Offering and Kedoshim. Two parshas together, or it's one large parsha. Achrie Offering begins with the parsha of Yom Kippur, and it finishes with the parsha of Arayos, the immorality, inappropriate relationships. And that's most of the parsha. 80%, 90% of the parsha is, the first part of the parsha is Yom Kippur, which on Yom Kippur we read in the morning. And the other part of the parsha is the parsha of Arayos, which is what we read on Yom Kippur in the afternoon. In between there's a short parsha that speaks about illicit bringing of karbanos, abuse of karbanos. First it speaks about what's called shchutei chutz, shechting a carbon appropriately. Then it speaks about halas chutz, if you offer up a carbon in the wrong place. And he also speaks about not eating blood. And that's pretty much it. Maybe there's also a mention of pigel. But the most of the parsha is Parshas Kedoshim, the second part of the parsha, is also quite long. Actually, it's one of the shorter parshas, but it's a chock full of mitzvahs. It's packed with mitzvahs. And the first part of the parsha talks about a variety of different things, all kinds of different halachas. And the second part of the parsha repeats again all of the halachas of Arayos, the second time. Everything you read in Parsha Achrie, you read, not word for word, but quite similar again in Parshas Kedosh. The reason why two successive parshas, two parshas in a row, speak about the same halachas is because there's a klal in Shas that there's something called azhara and there's something called oynish, which means any time there is an aveda, which there's a punishment, a severe punishment, a punishment of death, you have to have it two times. First you have to be told not to do it, and then you have to be told, if you do it, this is going to be the punishment. So Parshas Kedoshim in a way repeats what's said already in Parshas Achrie, because Parshas Achrie is the Azharis about immorality, about Gilui Arayos, and in Parshas Achrie you have the Einshim, as it's called, of Gilui Arayos. This is, for whatever it's worth, a very concise summary of these two Parshas, Parshas Achrie Meis and Kedoshim. One of the things that's mentioned in Parshas Achrie, as I told you before, we start off with Yom Kippur, we finish with Gilui Arayos. In the middle of a short little parsha that talks about what's called shchutei chutz, halas chutz, and dam. In between the two parshas about Yom Kippur and about Arayos, you have a small little parsha. We are going to learn inside from Pasuk Aleph until Pasuk Tes. Okay, and the reason I'm doing this is because I want to share with you a bit of a repetition and different opinions about it. So on page 1, let's start from the beginning. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu that he should repeat. We wonder to who? Because the next words say, David al Aaron, speak to Aaron, Vel Bonav to his sons, Vel Kol B'nei Yisrael to the rest of the Jewish people. V'amarta aleim, and you should tell them, right? So the V'amarta aleim, you could say, means future generations. But the Leimer is l'chayda extra, but okay, we'll make believe we didn't notice. This is what the Eibishter commanded. Leimer weiter, you should repeat. So how many words mean to speak? Vaydaber, leimer, daber, va'amarta, leimer. 5 words are used in 2 psukim to connote communication. And the pasuk continues, ish, mi beis Yisrael, any yid from the house of Israel, asher yishchat, who will shecht, shoyrei chesav v'ez, an ox or a lamb or a goat, ba'machana, in the camp, or asher yishchat michutz la'machana, or he'll shecht it outside of the camp. Ve'al pesach ayal mayed lahaviyah, he's not going to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash. La'akriv karban la'Hashem, to bring an offering to the Eibishter, lifnei mishkan ad Hashem, in front of the tabernacle, the sanctuary of God. Dam yechashav le'shahu, it's considered as if he's a murderer. Dam shafach, as if he has spilled the blood of a person because he's abused the carbon, and therefore v'nichras ha'ishahu mikarav amid, that man is to be cut off. Why? Leman, the reason is Asha Yaviyu b'nei Yisrael lezivchayim, that the Jews, the sons of Israel, should bring their offerings. Asha him zevchem apnei asah, that they're offering on the face of the field. Ve'aviyam adeshem, they should bring them to God Almighty, al Pesach hayol meir, to the entrance of the tent of meeting, elakayin, to the priest. V'zavchu, and they should make their offerings into zivchei shlomim la'avayim, offerings of shlomim. Shlomim means peace, where there's a piece for the Eibishter, and there's a piece for the Kohen, and a piece for the Bailim, oisam out of them. And v'zara kakein esadam, al mizbach havaya, the Kohen, the priest, will offer up this blood on the altar of God. Pesach Almighty, at the entrance to the Beis HaMikdash, v'hikter hachelav, and he will additionally offer up the fat, l'reich necheichel Hashem, as an offering for pleasure to the Eibishter, by bringing it in the Beis HaMikdash. And then he adds, they should no longer slaughter their karbanas, la Seiirim. The translation of the word Seiirim means goats. They shouldn't offer up their karbanas to goats, but Rashi says, and all the Mefarshim seem to imply, Seiirim means to demons, to the spirits, that they're going astray to follow them. This is a law which is for always. There should be for them, for all generations. A Yid has to bring his animals to the Beis HaMikdash, otherwise it's Isser Karis, and he's bringing a carbon to Shadin. What did it say in Pasuk Ches? Va'aleim Teimar, you should tell them, and repeats the same thing over again. Ish mi Beis Yisrael, any man of the house of Israel. U'menageh sheyaga b'seicham, as well as the converts who will join with them. And I believe some of the Mefarshim hold that the word Geir over here means a Ger Teshav, a guy who's bringing karbanis. Asher Yala Eila Yizavach, who's going to bring a carbon. Ve'al Pesach ayol mayed laYaviyed, is not going to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash. Last says Eisel Hashem, to do it to God. V'nichras ha'isha humayam, this man should be cut off. So if you look at Psukim Aleph until Zayin, and then Pasuk Ches until Tes, it seems to be saying the same thing twice. Pasuk Aleph Zayin says if you bring an animal outside the Beis HaMikdash, it's Chiyuv Kares. And Pasuk Ches Tes says if you bring an animal outside the Beis HaMikdash, it's a Chiyuv Kares. Why is it repeated twice? So Rashi says because there's 2 different Avedas. One Aveda is to shecht it outside the Beis HaMikdash, and another Aveda is to burn it on a Mizbeach other than the Mizbeach in the Beis HaMikdash. So Psukim Aleph to Zayin are saying what's called Hashchutei Chutz. You're not allowed to shecht karbonis outside the Beis HaMikdash. And Pasuk Chasan Tes is what we would call halas chutz. That even if you shecht it in the Beis HaMikdash, you cannot take the emidim, as it's called, the limbs that are destined to be consumed by the Mizbeach, and offer them up on what's called the Bama or any other kind of Beis HaMikdash, any other kind of Mizbeach, out of the Beis HaMikdash, and it's a separate Isser Kares. Are we clear? 9 psukim that describe the same lav, same Isser Kares twice. The pashtus, the understanding of these 2, as the Rashi says, and I think this is also how the halacha would go. The first 7 psukim are telling you do not shecht a carbon out of the Beis HaMikdash, and the last 2 psukim are saying do not offer up the remains of a carbon out of the Beis HaMikdash. Are we clear? If this pshat holds true, then this entire parsha, these 9 psukim, are talking only about karbanos. person brings a carbon, he has to bring it in the Beis HaMikdash. And this requirement to bring a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash is an Isser Kares. If you don't bring it in the Beis HaMikdash, it's a Chas Sham being cut off. And there's two parts to the Isser Kares. Number one, for shechting it outside, and number two, for offering it up outside. Does anybody have any questions or comments on what I said so far? Okay, if you have no questions, you have no comments, here goes. There's another whole pshat, which seems to be the pshat that the Rambam brings. I don't know if he brings it in Hilchas. He says, Yad HaChazaka, but he brings it in Made in Nevuchim. And a lot of the Mefashim, or some of the Mefashim bring it. It's a machlokes in the Gemara and Chulin and a Mechilta. Okay, the first pshat I told you is the Mechilta, which is what Rashi brings, and the Gemara and Chulin is a different pshat. There's a fascinating phenomena which people don't know so much. And that was that in the Midbar you were not allowed to eat meat. The 40 years that the Jews were in the Midbar, you were not allowed to eat meat, unless it was a carbon. So if you lived in the Midbar, right, we all read about the Maisa with Slav, everybody wanted to have meat and so on and so forth. The fact was, any species of animal which could have been a carbon, you had to make it into a carbon. You wanted to eat beef, you wanted to eat lamb, you had to walk to the Mishkan, which was walking distance. The whole Machana was your Beis Mil, and bring a carbon. But you couldn't stam azoi eat meat in your private home. It was not allowed. Once Yidden went into Eretz Yisrael, you had the same Parsha Achrie and Dvarim. The Eibishter was matter to Yidden what is called B'sar Taiva. B'sar Taiva means meat which is eat for pleasure, for temptation. Okay? You got it? I'll say it again. There's another way of learning these two halachas, these two parshas, because in the times that the Yidden were in the Midbar, Yidden were not allowed to eat meat in the Midbar except if it was a carbon. Any Jew who wanted to eat meat from a cow or an ox or a goat or a lamb had to bring it as a carbon. And stamazay to sit in your living room, in your tent in Machanei Dan, 3 million from the Beis HaMikdash, wherever it was asr. Anytime you wanted to eat meat, you had to walk to the Beis HaMikdash, make it into a carbon, give the Eibishter his portion, which was the blood and the fat, and the rest you were able to keep to yourself, and you had to eat it l'shnei yamim v'layla echad. That's all the halachas of a carbon were. You with me? Parenthesis. There is a weird exception to this rule. A very weird exception to this rule. The weird exception to this rule was that there was a way to eat meat and not make it into a carbon even in the Midbar. What was that? If you didn't shech the animal, if you killed the animal through suffocation. In the Midbar, you were not allowed to eat meat, which was called B'sar Taiva, meat which you were eating for pleasure. Anytime a person wanted to eat meat, it had to be made into a carbon. If he shechted an animal in his backyard or in his front porch or in his tent, in the Midbar, it was Isser Kares. The only way a Jew could eat meat in the Midbar and not make it into a carbon was to kill it by suffocating it. Now every child knows that nechira is asur, it's a nevela. Right? If you choke an animal to death, it's treif, can't eat it. But in the Midbar, nechira was mutter.
And they had to do it only by the Mishkan, by the Mizbeach?
Only in the Midbar.
And by the Mizbeach?
No. If they did nechira, it didn't have to be. Hastis, in the Midbar, if you wanted to eat meat and not make it into a carbon, you couldn't shecht it. There was no shchita. You couldn't raise that animal up. There was no shchita. You suffocate. The animal remained an animal even after you ate it. It didn't become elevated. If you wanted to shecht an animal, zvicha, that every time you shecht an animal, you're raising it up from the level of chai to the level of medabir, it had to be a carbon. If a person shechted an animal in his backyard, there was an Isser Kares in the Midbar. When Yidden went to Yisrael, two things changed. Number one, the chira was ne'asar. the Eibishter outlawed choking. You couldn't kill an animal through choking it. And number two, the Eibishter was matib sad taiva. That means to say you could shecht an animal in Yehuda, in Golul, in Evrei Yarden, and that was legitimate. That was fine. It didn't have to necessarily be in the Beis HaMikdash. Okay? Now, only as a carbon. Only as a carbon. Which meant there had to be a tamim. You had to be tahir. And most importantly, it had to be eaten the yam v'layla echad. You shecht a cow, you want to last for a winter. Yeah. In the middle, you shechted a cow, you had to invite the whole neighborhood. You had a day and a half to eat it. You had 2 days and a night. So in other words, the idea of stacking your freezer with meat was not shaykh in the midbar. Unless you didn't do shchita. In the chida, it was mutter. So there's a Gemara Masechta Chulin, and the Rambam, I think, in the Medevuchim for sure holds that's the difference between the two parshas. The first 7 psukim, which say, if you look at page 1, Daber al Aaron vel Bona vel Kobnei Yisov Amata Aleim Ish mi beis Yisrael asher yishchat sheirei kesev eis b'machane. He's chayav misa. This doesn't mean asher yishchat sheirei kesev eis of a korban, like Rashi says. What does Rashi say? The first word of Rashi on page 1, b'mugdashin hakasav medaber. Right? The first page 1, b'mugdashin hakasav medaber. According to this Gemara, it's not talking about mugdashim. It's talking stama that you want to eat meat in the midbar, has to be a korban. If you shecht an animal in the midbar, you don't make it into a korban, it's a kodesh. Then pasuk Ches and Tes are saying Valeyam Teimad, page 2 and 3 now. Ish me beis Yisrael. Asher yala oila izov v'chapes v'nichlas is a different halach. That the first 7 psukim are talking about what's called basar taiva b'midbar. You were not allowed to eat meat for pleasure in the desert to serve yourself unless you made it into a korban. And pasuk Ches and Tes are talking about a korban. So you have 2 basic, emphasis on the word basic, ways of interpreting these 2 parshas. And by the way, beginning with pasuk Yud, he starts talking about dam. This is dam. The 4th is a blood, which is a lot of the Mefarshim connect these things. It's a ganze shturim. There's a very involved Abarbanel, which I didn't put into the stack of the people. I should have wasted the paper. We weren't going to get to it anyway. Do I have your attention? Yeah? There are 2 successive parshas that seem to repeat the same thing twice. One says if you shecht an animal outside the Beis Mikdash is kodesh. The other one says you offer up the animal outside the Beis Mikdash is kodesh. And we have 2 ways of explaining this repetition. One way is, which seems to be the Mechilke, Rashi brings it, the more halachic way is, at the first parsha is talking about what's called shchutei chutz, shechting outside the Beis HaMikdash. And the second parsha is called about ha'aloas chutz, offering it up, burning it outside the Beis HaMikdash. And the second difference says no. The first, second psukim are not, 7 psukim are not talking about shchutei chutz. They're talking about basar taiva, eating meat through shchita. It wasn't a korban. In the midbar, you are not allowed to eat shchita, meat, basar taiva through shchita without bringing it to the Beis HaMikdash. And the last 2 psukim are talking about shchutei chutz. In other words, one opinion says that the first 7 psukim of Perek Yud Zayin are a mitzvah l'doros, or one of the Tayag mitzvahs. And the other opinion says that these first 7 psukim are a hira ashur. That for that generation, they're not counted in the Minyan Taryag. The Rambam writes in the Sharashim, which the ladies all know because they're the ones who learn Sefer HaMitzvahs, that any mitzvah which is only for a period of time, like the mitzvah of Miluyim, is not in the Minyan Taryag. Right? Correct? Now, this is not a class on Karbanis for 2 reasons. You're not interested, that's the first reason. And the second reason, which may come first, is I'm not qualified to teach it. We're going to focus on, like I told in the beginning of the class, on the weird pasuk Zayin. Look inside, page 2. The Jews should stop offering up their karbanos to goats. It's understood that Seiirim means Sheidim, demons, spirits, after whom they are following. Chukas Olam, a law which is eternal. This should be to them, but they raise them for all future generations. This pasuk Zayin is saying what? That if you will do what I told you not to do, it's the equivalent of being Zayveach la Seiirim. If you will do what I wrote in the first 6 psukim, it's the equivalent of offering a carbon to a shed, to the Seiirim. Since we have 2 different pshatim in those psukim, so this pasuk Zayin has to be consistent with both pshatim. Whether you say that this parsha is talking about shchutei chutz, sacrificing a carbon outside the Beis HaMikdash, or it's talking about shchita of basatayva b'midbar, both of these infractions, both of these avedis are the equivalent of zevicha lashedim, laseirim. Okay? So the topic of tonight, if you want to be blunt about it, we're going to learn about shedim. That's what we're going to learn about. If it spooks you out, don't worry, the sun hasn't gone down yet, and if you're really afraid, you can run away. Okay, we'll talk about shedim. Why? Why not? That's me. I'm talking about it because no one else is going to talk about it. Why? Because who cares? The Mefarshim have very little to say. I have 2 shelves first of Mefarshim on Chumash. All the Mekubalim have pages and pages, but the Pashtanim have nothing to say. I mean, the Kli Yakar has a few words. The Rechaim Zok Bechlal Garnished. What is this business of offering up carbon to Shedim? What does this mean? And how is this notion of offering up a carbon to Shedim consistent with both of these pshatim? Both with the pshat that's talking about shechting a carbon onto the Beis HaMikdash, as well as the idea that when the Yidden were in the midbar, they were not allowed to eat meat altogether through shechita, except if it was a carbon until they went into Eretz Yisrael. Okay? So let's say we have 2 questions. A is, what is this business of shechting to a shed? And the Loshen Asher Heim Zeinim Achareim, they're going astray after them. And B, how is this idea consistent with both interpretations of the parsha? Whether it means shchutei chutz or it means basatayv in the midbar through shchita, how is that consistent with the idea of offering a carbon laseirim asherim zeinim acharei? Okay, you got it? Anybody want to say anything? Okay, so here goes. First of all, we're going to read the Gemara. And the Gemara is on page 5. On the right, Nun Tes. A little bit, I'm going to give myself a license. What I'm about to tell you, it says in Torah. In some place in Devarim, the Rishonim talk about this. And I'm going to read into this particular Gemara. This is the Gemara which you have in a few places in Shas. Here, Parsha. I'm going to give you a very short Hakdama. Okay? Avodah Zarah is Asr. Avodah Zarah is Asr. You're not allowed to worship idols. It's the worst Avodah in the Torah. A person who worships idols, he can't trust for anything. Not for kosher, not for nothing. Is idol worship disgusting? The Lashon of Torah is Tayeva. Is idol worship disgusting? In other words, when Torah outlaws idol worship, does that mean automatically that every single idol worship is abominable? A form of idol worship is abominable, disgusting, and sick and chfeh? How could you stoop so low? So there's the pasuk. You have a pasuk in the Torah which describes Tayaves Ha'amim, the abomination, the disgusting practices of the nations, and the Rishonim argue about it. The Rishonim argue the following question: according to Torah, is every ritual of idol worship disgusting? Yes or no? Some say yes. The Torah considers idol worship abominable. Whatever idolaters do is automatically a disgusting thing, a putrid thing, a sick thing. Fair. Like they always say, the person makes a cheshbon, okay, I'm not going to Avodah Zarah, I'll do the same service that Eibishter. Says Eibishter, do me a favor, don't mix. Anything, if idol worship, they're doing pum fakir. They gather the blood, we're going to sprinkle the blood. They didn't kill certain species of animals, we're not going to kill those species. Atz fakir. But there is another point of view. The other point of view, it says, listen, idol worship is asur, but not all forms of idol worship are disgusting. V'haraya, there are practices in karbanis that are similar to, and let's be careful how we word this, similar to Avodah Zarah practices, because the practice by itself is not the Isser, it's the Kavanah that's wrong. If you are worshipping Eitz V'Evan, it's Avodah Zarah. For you, the same worship to the Eibishter, it could be Avodah Hashem. So there's a point of view that says if something is Avodah Zarah, it's automatically disgusting up potato. And there's another point of view that says, listen, it's Avodah Zarah. But if you would do the same ritual to the Eibishter, it would be Avodah L'Havaya. It would be Avodah L'Gavaya. It would be a service to the Eibishter. This is what the Gemara says on the right side of your page. They shouldn't offer up their karbanas lasidim to goats, which means to demons. If a person shechts a carbon to Avodah Zarah called markulis, how do we know he's chayiv? Parenthesis. Though markulis is not served, worshipped through karbanis, shenem, as the pasuk says, the translation that Abai say is very simply this: there were forms of idol worship that had meaning. They were sophisticated, but their idol worship nevertheless. For example, the first idolaters, what do they worship? They worship malachim. They worship the angels. They worship the koiches hateva on its most abstract madreges. It was a meaningful practice. It's osur. It's the worst aveda in the Torah, but it's not stupid. It's not childish. It's wrong. Why is it wrong? Because they worshipped malachim in what we call in Chassidus shnius. They separated the malach from the Eibishter, and they said, the Eibishter is a malach Gavriel. I'm going to worship malach Gavriel. You're not supposed to worship malach Gavriel. You're supposed to worship the Eibishter, to whom malach Gavriel is kegadas from Yad HaChetzev. Malach Gavriel is a tool in the Eibishter's hand. So the first pagans were big chachamim, and their worship of idols was wrong, but it wasn't stupid and it wasn't disgusting, because they were worshiping sublime things. As idol worship devolved, it went from being wrong to being pashut, disgusting, perverse, sick. The lower forms of idol worship are not just wrong because they're separating from the Eibishter. They're wrong because they're sick, disgusting practices. And as a consequence, you have two inyonim, two concepts in the Isra of Avodah Zarah. Some things are asur. It's not the ritual that's asur. It's the meaning behind it. To worship a malach, even if you're worshipping a malach with a very meaningful avodah, it's a declaration of ahepach ha'achtos, and it's asur. They can no longer offer karbanos to Seiirim. What this pasuk is saying is, listen, Yidden, I am talking to you about the halachas of karbanos, or I am talking to you about halachas of basar taiva b'midbar, and I'm telling you it's not allowed. You're not allowed to shech the carbon out of the Beis HaMikdash. Or alternatively, you're not allowed to eat basar taiva in the midbar through shechita unless you make it into a carbon. Doing so is not only wrong, it's sick. It's like offering up a carbon to a shed. Some Avodah Zarahs are meaningful, but asur. This is perverse. It's sick. It's low. Okay? The Gemara explains this lowliness using the following form. As I told you a minute ago, some idol worships were sophisticated. They had a lot of chachma behind it, even though they were wrong. Some idol worships were plain, simple, disgusting. Feh. Like Pa'ir. It was an Avodah Zarah. The whole Avodah Zarah was a latrine. It's not just the pshat that's asur. It's so undignified. One of the more lowly forms of worship was called markulis. Markulis means what you made a tower of stones, one stone on top of two stones, and you knocked it down. That was Avodah Zarah. What kind of great feat was accomplished by hitting off a keystone from the top of two support stones? I don't know. But Markulis and Pa'ir represent Avodah Zarahs that, in addition to being asur, are pashut reprehensible. They're sick. So the Gemara says, Minayin l'sheichet behem l'makulis. If you come to a disgusting avodah zarah and you shecht a behema, now understand, shechting a behema, right, is honorable. V'haraya, we shecht behemis in the Beis Hamikdash, but sheichet behema lemarkulis is disgusting. Since avodah zarah markulis is a disgusting thing, even when you take a behema and you shecht it, and shechting an animal is a korban, even if it's wrong, is honorable. But when you shecht a behema to a disgusting avodah zarah, the shechita itself becomes disgusting. So pasuk Zayin is saying, they shouldn't offer of karbonis that are not only wrong, but they're disgusting. Remember the pasuk says. So this use of the word lasi'idim, it's very uncommon. How many times in the Chumash are we describing a shed, a demon, a spirit, and we're calling the shed a soir, a goat, the image of a goat with the horns, the pictures that they make, the devil with big horns. That's the visual. It symbolizes not just an iyam van avodah zarah, it symbolizes an iyam van avodah zarah, which is pashut disgusting. Okay. Now, parenthesis. The other place where such an allusion is mentioned is in this same Parsha Achrie, by the Yom Kippur service. One of the aspects of the Yom Kippur service, which is considered one of the most controversial things in all of the Torah, is called Azazel. That they would throw an animal off a cliff, and the animal was sent to Azazel. And the sending of an animal Azazel is very similar to, according to many of the Mefarshim, this illusion of Seiirim here. And a lot of the Mefarshim connect the two Pashas. That since on Yom Kippur there was Iyam and Azazel, so right afterwards they bavorin, but that's not the same thing as Yizvach La Seiirim. It's very, very different. So if I needed to summarize what I just said for the last, let's say, 5-10 minutes, I would say that the Torah is categorizing Avodah Zarah into two categories. Some avodah zarah may be osir, but it's not considered disgusting. You don't say the word znus. Some in Yom avodah zarah are not only wrong, they're sick. And the example for this is zevicha laseirim. What's so disgusting about shechting a korban laseirim? So the answer is, as you'll see soon, that Rambam speaks about length of Meir Nevuchim, is because it was a worship that revolved around the blood. They would gather the blood in the belief that where the blood was, the spirits would gather. And they would try to offer incense to the spirits, to the shade, and to the demons in association with the blood. In some cases, they would actually eat the blood. And eating blood is disgusting. So Zevicha Laseirim is not simply the shechita to a shed, it's a whole culture of a class of Avodah Zarah, which is in addition to being osir, is pashut shameful. It's disgusting. It's fair. Okay? Let me elaborate a little bit. Idol worship has one criteria, ultimately. Idol worship is saying that there is somebody else in charge besides for Hashem, and I'm honoring Him. I'm worshiping Him. I'm praying to Him. That's what idol worship means. It's simple enough. Idol worship means there is somebody else worth honoring because there's somebody else with power. That's idol worship. Now, there are many levels of idol worship. We have in Chumash Rashi, Avraham Avinu knew Arabs who worshipped the dust on top of their feet. Now, why would anybody worship the dust on top of your feet? It's very simple. If the dust is on top of my foot, that means it's higher than my foot. So I have a reason to worship. Stupid? Absolutely. But people even worship. People found 1,000,001 reason to worship in the most ridiculous and meaningless and most sick ways, almost anything. On the other extreme, some of the Avodah Zarah were worshipping the Kechav Mazalis. They were worshipping the Galgalim. They were worshipping the Nivdolim. They were worshipping Malachim. They were worshipping very, very profound spiritual forces which they identified in nature. They associated with certain stars, there were certain constellations, and it was very sophisticated. Like, for example, the 12 signs of the zodiac, Mazolis, have a basis in Torah. Rambam brings them in Hilchos Yesod Torah, Astrology has a basis in Teres Emes. You have to know how to use astrology, and then of course Ein Mazal Yisro and Tamim Ti'alav Aylekecha we learned last summer or 2 summers ago the Parsha in the A. But there were a lot of idolaters who worship very lofty things. So you had idolaters who worshipped Malachim. It was the highest madrega of idolaters. You had idolaters who worshipped the heavens. That means to say the Malachim that were connected to physical bodies, be it the individual stars or groups of stars, constellations, or orbits, units of space. Lower than them you had idolaters who worshipped Shaidim, spirits, demons. Some worshipped the demons of fire, some worshipped demons of water, some worshipped the demons of air, and some worshipped the demons of earth. And then you had idolaters who worshipped their king. So there's a lot of madregas in Avodah Zarah. Hatzada shavesh bekulam. The constant is that you are creating division in the Eibishter's world, which is the greatest sin, and it's a skila, the worst Aveda in the world, the Ol of Torah. But some of those practices were wrong and meaningful, and some of those practices are disgusting. Our Parsha is saying that the practices of idolatry that involved the manipulation of blood was not only wrong, it's disgusting. And that's how you read this pasuk. The connotation of the word nus is not only that it's wrong, it's even for an idolater. You're an Avodah Zarah, but zanish kachazir. This is a sick worship. That's how this pasuk is read. And this pasuk is consistent with both interpretations of the Parsha, whether it's an allusion to shchutei chutz, shechting a carbon which belongs in the Beis HaMikdash, outside the Beis HaMikdash, or it's an allusion to shchitas basatayva b'mid. Look at the left side of your page now. V'layis is a medrash, which the Rambam basically quotes almost word for word. V'layis b'chuei de zivchayim l'se'irim. Zog the medrash Rab Pinchas b'shem Rab Levi Omar the Tanoim said, Moshe ben Melech, there was a prince, Shegas li be'yolav. He was very, very coarse, very fargerept, very indulgent in grobkeit. And he had gotten into the habit of eating nevel satrefes, not healthy meat, sick food, the kind of food that a normal person wouldn't eat. The Omar HaMelech says the king, I want him to eat breakfast, lunch, and supper with me. And by forcing this prince to eat everything he ate with the king, he automatically refined him. He dissociated him from his old habit of eating in a sick way, because he was forced to behave appropriately because he was sitting with the Melech. And they said to him, Amashal. Zokmen Kach, what is the Nimshal? Jews were lahut. Lahut means chasing after it with desperation. The idolatry of Mitzrayim. And as a lot of the Mefarshim say and explain, Avodah Zarah devolved. Avodah Zarah got worse and worse over time, right? We believe that the first people worshipped one God. And from one God, they fell into idol worship. Right? That's our position. That's Teres Emes. But they fell slowly. The first idolaters were very sophisticated. They understood the Lakod, the Lakaya, and so on. The later idolaters became worse and worse and worse. And some of the Mefarshim say that in Mitzrayim at that time, a newer, sicker, more perverse, more lowly form of idol worship was introduced, which was idol worship that revolves around the blood and as the worship of the demons. So it wasn't Stam, it was a new Avodah Zarah. It was a brand new, lower, more tangible, more grub, more crude form of worship. And consequently, Yisrael, Luhuta Machra Avodah Zarah b'Mitzrayim, V'hayim Karbanei Seiirim, Karbanei Seiirim. They brought karbanos to goats. They brought karbanos to Shaidim. If you bring a carbon to a malach, it's also an Aveda. But it's not disgusting. You bring a carbon to a shed by digging a groove in the ground and filling it with blood and sitting over it and imagining that he's feeding on this blood and then you drinking it is sick. And goats here means spirits, Shaidim. Shenema v'yizbechol ha-Shaidim. Ve'ein Shaidim ela Seiirim. Shenema ha-Seiirim yirkedu sham. V'ayom akriven karbaneim be'isir. Bama uporani is by Malain. They're bringing their karbanos be'isir. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu says the Eibishter Yiyu Makrivim Lefani B'chal Eis Korban Seiirim. Jews should bring the Karbanos to me. V'ayal Mayed, V'yiyu Nefrashim, Avei Zara, and they'll automatically be separate from Zara and they're going to be saved. So the Parsha the Pshat in this medrash, this is a universal law. Throughout history, Hashem does not allow Yidden to bring Karbanos out of the Beis HaMikdash so that they shouldn't fall into this abomination. But the Rambam says no. This medrash is talking about that generation. For those 40 years, they had just left Egypt. They had just departed from the pagan ways of their ancestors, and they were lahut. They were so caught up in the worship of the spirits with these blood that they couldn't stop themselves. So the Eibishter says, you want to eat meat? Bring a korban. You are not allowed to shecht an animal in the midbar in your own tent, because the Eibishter wanted to take away from Yidden the possibility of falling into this abomination. So he said, in the midbar, you're not allowed to eat basar taiva at all. You can't shecht and eat meat. He was afraid they would save the blood. So this medrash also can be read as a broader and narrow allusion. Take a look at the Rambam quickly. The Rambam is on page 7. Where I made those 7 arrows, yeah? Someone was excited, huh? Yeah? Okay. The Jewish people were totally caught up in this rebellious way. And they ran after what was familiar and they were raised with. Which had to do with the spirits, by eating around the blood, as the tradition was. Tziva Yisal, the Eibishter commanded, midbar, klau. Then in the midbar, you're not allowed to shecht and eat meat, period, except if it's a korban. Because what do you do with the blood of a korban? You throw it away. What is the symbolism of sprinkling the blood on the Mizbeach, according to the Rambam? The opposite of gathering it. You're throwing it away. You shafech. They used to gather the blood in a crevice, in a crack. And when you take blood from an animal, you throw it away. The opposite of Avodah Zarah. Aliyakel shlamim. Anybody who wants to eat meat, but has to be a korban. Ubir lana. When the explanation is kitam adava, the reason is this kedei lefazer adam levech, to disperse, to scatter, to waste the blood of the mizbeach v'leiskap to svive, rather than collecting around it. V'amar, as the pasuk says in our parsha, leman yavios b'nei leman hashevis nisov v'gemer v'layizbechu eid ezevchayim laseidim v'gemer. They shouldn't offer up to the demons. So this Rambam made in Nevuchim is consistent with the second interpretation of the Psukim, which is the interpretation of the Gemara in Chulin, as opposed to the Mechilta. And the issue was, since at that particular time, Yidden was so caught up in this new and sick Avodah Zarah, the Eibishter said, It's not like it's less asur than a sophisticated Avodah Zarah, but it's a different thing. The Torah is saying it's asur, and on top of being asur, it's fair. That's enough. Okay? So you have, what we did so far was we overviewed the Parsha, and we focused in on the Pasuk, which is the topic of tonight's class. What is this business about offering up karbanos to goats, to demons, to Seiirim? And the vart, of course, here is that it's not only asur, it's znus, it's disgusting. Now let's go back to the Mefarshim. Okay, if you want to read the Even Ezra, the Even Ezra is on page 2 and 3, please. On the left side. Second section. Says the Even Ezra, La Seiirim, you see the place? To the goats. Says he heim hashedim. This means the spirits. V'nikru kain. Why are ghosts called spirits? Ba'avur sheishtar aguf harayis. it causes the hair of a person who sees them to stand up. In other words, it frightens the daylights out of you. So Seiirim means to this very, very intimidating and frightening thing. What are Seiirim? What are demons? Apiteta demons exist. Soon you're going to learn a whole arichas what a shed is. It's a whole chazal. Demons are creations of the Eibishter. If you ever learned Rashi and paid attention, you know that Noach took a male and a female shed into the teva. Because if he hadn't taken him into the teva, they would have all drowned. They would have died. And after the Mabel, just like all the other animals came out, the Sheidim also came out, and they were part of it over Baritz. They multiplied. They had children. So Sheidim are creations of God, which are invisible. We cannot see them. Yet they're considered real and even physical. Here he brings, that Ramban brings, that they're created from two elements, Eish and Ruach. The Rikanti, which is in the stack, but I'm not going to learn it with you, says, he brings rayas that they have no goof whatsoever. And he resolves, it's not a stira and so on. In some places it says that a shed is made of one element. There's 4 types of shedim. There's shedi ha'esh, shedi ha'ruach, shedi ha'mayim, shedi ha'af. Everything we could see is called a murkav. It's made up of all 4 elements. Eish, ruach, mayim, af. A shade is a physical thing made up of one element. But for something to be available to the 5 senses, to see it, to hear it, smell it, taste it, or touch it, it must be murkav of dalad yeshedis. So a shed is a physical thing which is not physical enough for you and I to be able to see, and it's around. And you read in the Gemara, Masechta Pshachim, and in Masechta Gittin, whole sugis, pages and pages, folio after folio about Sheidim and how to deal with them. Maybe it's also Masechta Gemara and Masechta Brachas, because they have a relationship with us. They're semi-physical, and they frighten the daylights out of us, and that's why they're called Seiirim. Imagine a ghostly, an intimidating, a frightening, otherworldly visual. That's a shed. So the Ibn Ezra says the reason Sheidim are called Seiirim is because they're frightening. They make your hair stand up straight. Okay? V'hakarev, continues Ibn Ezra, it's also reasonable to say, Bavur sheyiru eisam hamashagoyim kidmusirim. Who sees Sheidim? Meshagoyim. Whether they see them or imagine they're seeing them, but they're seeing them. And what they see looks like a goat. Big horns and a long beard, it's frightening. So the allusion to Sheidim as Seiirim either means because it makes your hair stand up straight, or because somehow the likeness of a shed had this kind of a visual. But be that as it may, Seiirim doesn't mean goats. Doesn't mean you're worshiping goats. It means you're worshiping Sheidim, which is Aveda Zara. And in addition to being Aveda Zara, it's also called Znus. It's called sick, feh, lowly. Umilas oid Torah. The Lash and the Pasuk v'layizbechu oid. You won't anymore worship to the Sheidim. Indicate that in Egypt, Yidden and Goyim Lahav were involved in this idol worship, and like I told you, some of the Mepharshim say it was a brand new. In other words, Avodah Zarah kept on getting more and more perverse. This was a new step of descent into lowliness, to do a worship that involved the gathering and eating of blood. So the Yidden were lahut, they were all caught up in it. Neibish to asr it. Asher heim zeinim, like the Ibn Ezra, he called me, Shemavake Sheidim, anybody who seeks out the Sheidim, or Maimim Behem and believes in them, who zoyne mitachas alakav, is going astray from his God, sheyachshe, because he thinks, ki yesh mish yeitev v'yeira, that somebody can do good or bad to him, chutz mehashem anich balaneda, besides for the Yebishter. So the Ibn Ezra is disagreeing with what I told you. The Ibn Ezra is saying that the word zoynim doesn't mean a lowly Avodah Zarah, it means any Avodah Zarah. Any Avodah Zarah is considered znus because you're supposed to worship only one God. But like I told you, some of the Mepharshim explain it as I explained it to you based on that Gemara, which you have in Masechta Sanhedrin and Masechta Avodah Zarah and Masechta Zvachim, that Zeveach Korban LeMarkulis, which is not just an Avodah Zarah, it's considered the Shalei Kedarka, Shalei Kedarka Avedasa, and it's considered an Avodah Zarah of Busha, a lowly Avodah Zarah, which is the basis for what I told you earlier in this class. Okay. Now, the Ramban is going to take some time. The Ramban is at the very bottom of the page to the right. Yes, Leah, what do you want to say?
The goats are kosher animals. Their milk is kosher.
Right.
So I don't understand why.
Okay. The last, page 2, the Ramban is near the bottom on the right, the last two words. V'hakarev, it's my opinion. No, I'm sorry, forget that. Page 3. Page 3. The Yikru Sheidim. Why are spirits called spirits? Do you see what I'm reading? On the right side, 6 lines into the Ramban. Ba'avur shamishkenim b'makim shadod k'gein hamidbar. They're called Sheidim because they live in places that are forsaken, that are desolate like a desert. So the word shade is the word shadud, to be cast out, to be in a place of alienation where nobody else is around. They live in extremes. You gain past either the far north, which is very cold, or the far south, which is very, very hot. Vida, and the Ramban gives you an expose on Sheidim, and everybody quotes the Ramban. The Rikante quotes the Ramban word for word. The Tzayuni quotes the Ramban word for word. The Rabbeinu Bechaya quotes the Ramban word for word. The Ramban elaborates on Inyan HaSheidim, and all those Rishonim that are Shachas, the Chochmah Zakabbalah, just copy him word for word. Some add a little nuance, but essentially they're quoting the Ramban. When the Eibishter created the world at the outset, Beguf ha'adam, in creating the bodies of man, ubechol balei ha'nefesh, and all living physical beings, v'atzmachem, and plants, v'amatoches, and minerals, metals, he made them me'arba yeshedes, from 4 elements, v'nischabru arbatam b'keich elaki, and the 4 elements were woven together, what we call eish, ruach, mayim, and afal, were grafted together with a special divine power. Le'yes mehen guf, which by grafting the 4 elements together, it produces a body that is gas, that is coarse, that is murgish, that is felt. L'chol chameshet ha'argeshes, to all 5 senses, that means seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. La'avyeyu l'gasus, because it's so dense and it's so crude. Physical things that are made up of all 4 elements, eish, ruach, mayim, and afar, you can touch, and you can smell, you can taste, and you can see, and you can hear. To give you an example of something which is made up of 3, it says in Chassidus and Kabbalah that koil, voice, is only eish, ruach, mayim, has no offer. So al pi halacha, a kail has no mamoshes, and you cannot see it, you cannot touch it, you cannot smell it, you cannot taste it, you can only hear it. The reason it's not available to many of the senses is because it's not sufficiently, what are these words? Oven gas. Continues the Ramban, however, and he adds, there were other things that the Eibishter made out of 2 elements, from fire and wind alone. It also created the physical body, however, that none of the senses can relate to those physical creations. Just like we can't relate to a soul. Even the soul of an animal, right? An animal soul is connected to an animal. Can't see it. Even though it's a lowly thing, it's not a godly soul, but it's not physically sufficiently physical to be able to be identified. The same is true. Sheidim are created from Eish and Ruach. And I mentioned to you before that Ikanti brings a day from Zayah that they have no guf whatsoever. On the other hand, I saw in some other places in the Sheidim that Sheidim are made up of only 1 element, and there's different types of Sheidim. Sheidim Amayim, Sheidim Eish, Sheidim Ruach, and Sheidim Af.
What is the purpose of Hashem creating the Sheidim?
Okay, it's a long story. Some will say Pashto was a mistake. So you come in Shabbos, ich bin geblieben kein Zeit zu beschaffen was Gufim. In Pirkei Avos, in Perek Chamishi, it says, Asara dvarim nivru be'erev Shabbos bein hashmoshes, v'yesh emrim af ha'mazikin. Mazikin means Sheidim. In Chassidus, the bein hashmoshes, erev Shabbos, is a mamutza between Dibur and Machshavah. Fakat, there's milas in it. You could say it also Lamal Yusef. You could look at Sheidim as a positive thing as well. The point is that in the Eibishter's world, there's a lot more complexity than we know. And there's a lot more life than we know. And higher forms of life are actually less known. A malach is also a living thing. A malach is a neshama to a galgal, to an orbit, or to a star, or to a constellation. But malachim are even edler than Sheidim. Sheidim have a shaychus where they say this. And the malachim are b'shachas with the even way, the chemer hachamish. So there's different ways of looking at them, both positive and negative and so on. V'aguf hazehu ruchni. This body is considered physical but sufficiently spiritual that it is yotos. It could fly. Because of its fineness and its lightness in fire and in air. V'kasher ha'arkava b'chol dover sibas ha'avoya v'ha'hefsid b'murgiv mi'aba yasedus. And just like we know, at least according to the Parsha Achrie, that Rambam disagrees with this, that anything which is made up of parts has to eventually fall apart. If you glue together pieces, they will come apart. Kol hoive murkiv v'nifsed. Chassidus brings from Parsha Achrie, the Rambam disagrees. Anything which was created has different pieces that came together to make it be, and it will come apart, it will deteriorate. That's why everything dies. Says he, kachi b'merkava ma'elu mishnei hayasedus. It's true also of Sheidim. Since they are murkav, they're complex, they're made from two elements. Ki b'schabrusam yu b'alei aguf chai u'b'spadim yekames. Sheidim live and Sheidim die. Because they have a body and they have a complicated body. Less complex, less lowly than ours, but complicated nevertheless. And therefore Sheidim can fly and Sheidim live and Sheidim die. This is why our Chachamim tell us, and he brings the Gemara Masechta Chagiga. Shisha dvarim nemru b'Sheidim. There are 6 qualities we know about Sheidim. Shleishik malachi asharis. In 3 ways they're like angels. Or shleishik bnei adam. In 3 ways they're like people. Shleishik malachi asharis. They're like angels in the following 3 ways. Yeshlam knafayim kemalachi asharis. They have wings instead of hands or in addition to hands. They could fly, they could move through air like malachim, which means they're not fixed on one madreg, they can go from level to level. They know the future. You have in the Gemara, in different places in Shas, people went to cemeteries and there were spirits there who were saying what's going to happen tomorrow. Spirits, not neshamis, Sheidim. But they only knew the short-term future, and it was also inexact. They didn't know a lot. They knew a little bit. They know what's going to happen. They can hear what the future is going to be because they're a little bit closer than us to the Malachim. And because they're a little closer to the Malachim, they hear from the Malachim what's going on. You have in this stack, on pages 8, 9, and 10, the Tziyuni. And on the right side of the page, he brings a whole list of madregis. There's something called Nigidei Hateli, and then you have Galgalei Hashamayim, and then you have the Seiirim, which are Nefesh HaGalgalim, and the very bottom of the heap is Sheidim. There's a whole bunch of levels of spiritual things that exist in the physical space of the universe that are aware. Sheidim are the bottom of the heap. And because Sheidim are the bottom of the pile, they know Asides, they know the future a little bit. Shleisha Kibnei Adam, they have 3 faculties in common with people. Number 1, Eichlen V'Sheisen. Kibnei Adam, they eat and drink like people. Number 2, part of it other than they multiply. They have children, they have males and females. Umeisim Kibnei Adam, they die like people die. V'sibas hamisa is pira dachiba. The reason they die is because their hakava falls apart. Because since they're complex, they're made up of parts, like a human body. As the body weakens, it falls to pieces, it deteriorates, the neshama has to leave. He asiva b'chol amurkav, and this is the reason why they die, like all other things that are complex. One of the Mefarshim says something very, okay, there's some really, really wacky stuff here. You have in the Tziyuni, he brings about Ashmedai and so on. They have rules, the Sheidim. They have rules. But there's one set of rules of how they treat one another, and a completely different set of rules of how they treat human beings. And they look at us almost like we look at animals. So, to their own, there's all kinds of, there's decorum, there's halachas, and to human beings, they're to be exploited. As they say, masbir. V'sibas hatisa bekalas yisedeisam kashanira gamba off. The reason they could fly is because they're very light, like birds. Okay, because they're very light. Since they are predominantly fire and wind, the other elements are very diminished, could fly. So if a bird whose afar and mayim are less, the Eish and Ruach could fly, because Sheidim B'chlal don't have mayim and afar, they can for sure fly. The inyan or achila, turn the page, the concept, page 4 now, of them eating, is lilchech min hamayim v'ha'esh ha'reches v'aleches. This means to say they eat smoke and they eat steam. That's what it means. Now what this means in metaphysics, what it means in Ruchnius is a great curiosity, it's a great mystery. But they can't eat actual physical food, it's too grub. But vapor, steam, mist, this is their nourishment. Like fire will consume water after it vaporizes. Okay. And that's why the offerings that were brought to the Seiirim was always about the steam, about the incense, about the vapors, because this is their food. 5 lines from the top. The Inyan Masha Amru Shemin Masha Asad Liyas, the notion that they know the future, says that Ramban Ki B'tisasan Ba'aviri Hashamayim, they can fly up to the heights of heaven. Yekablu Asides Misari Hamalzoles Hashechem B'Yavir. In the atmosphere, high up, in the sky, you have finer and finer creations. According to Teda, the earth is the center and the bottom of the universe. The universe is round. The lowest point of the universe is in the middle, and that's the earth. So the further away you go towards the edges of the universe, the higher it is, spiritually speaking. And therefore there's higher madregas of malachim. And these Seiirim are able to fly so they can ascend to higher levels and hear what the malachim hear. The point really is that the Eibishter operates through a domino system. The Ashgacha of the Eibishter goes through steps. The Eibishter decides what's going to happen on earth, yeah? And then it goes through one malach, and a second malach, and a third malach, and a fourth madrega, and until they come down to the Karches HaTeva and manifest in the physical world. The Seiirim could fly so they can get the information ahead of time. They can go to where the Hashpah has already reached but hasn't yet descended to us. So they can know a little bit ahead of time what's going to happen. That's what the Gemara tells the story about this guy who wanted to harvest. He went one time to the Beis HaChayim and he heard the Seiirim in a conversation and he heard what's going to be that season with the crops. So he did different than everybody. He made a lot of money. The following year again he did different. And his wife became very suspicious. How do you have information nobody else has? She was a big yente. And then the Seiirim said to one another, the next time he visited, they say that the people are listening to our conversations. Anyway, there's a mice in the Gemara. I forgot the details, but there's such a story in the Gemara. It's the pshat. They see the hashpah as it's going down through Ishtashalus in earlier stages, which apparently has to do with Zman as well. So it's not the pshat that they know the future. They see the future as it's unfolding before it's unfolded all the way down to us. And in this respect, they know the future. There's a whole concept of Eifa Shamayim Yitnes Akel, even birds. Al-Piteit is the concept of birds knowing the future. So we have a shiur about Seiirim, a ma'aseh mit Seiirim. The Torah describes some Avodah Zarah as a Zevicha Yizvuchol HaSheidim Lo Yalakah La Seiirim. And according to this Gemara that we had before, I think it's a Masechta Chulin, this is not only considered wrong, it's considered disgusting. Now let's read a couple of more things. I'm not going to keep you here for very long. So what we'll do is like this. I put the Tziyuni here just to tease you. And the Rikanti, I didn't print the whole Rikanti because the first page of the Rikanti is pushed the verbatim quote from the Ramban. I want you to go to page 12. I want to show you the Alshach. And then there's a shtickle word from the Chassam Sefer. We have 2 successive pashas. 2 pashas, one after another, that both starts with the words ish ish. Remember? In Pasuk Gimel it says ish ish, and in Pasuk Ches it says ish ish. That both seem to be saying the same thing 2 times. And we have 2 ways of explaining that they aren't. Number 1, that the first parsha is talking about shchutei chutz, and the second parsha is talking about oilas chutz. And number 2, the first parsha is talking about, like the Rambam said, b'sar taiva, you're not allowed to shecht b'midbar, which is a Hira Shah, which is not a mitzvah. And the second parsha is talking about shchutei chutz. The Al-Sheikh, Teiras Meisha, offers a different pshat. What the Al-Sheikh is saying is that these two pashas are both talking about the same thing. And it's dafkir being said twice. Why is it being said twice? Because the Al-Sheikh holds that the Torah wants to say karbonis 2 times so that you should know number 1. There's a wrong way to bring karbonis, but there is a right way that you have to bring karbonis. There are those people who hold, namely the Rambam, in quotes, the only, it's a very uncomfortable word. I have a sheet on the internet on karbonis, in Parsha Achrie, you can listen. The only reason for karbonis is because since Jews had been involved in pagan practices before, when the Eibishter created his nation, he wanted to make the transition to the worship of one God easier, so he permitted them, in quotes, end quote, to offer up karbonis. The Rambam holds that the whole union of karbonis is an answer to idol worship. And the Ramban climbs the walls. I mean, there are a few cases where the Ramban gets angrier at the Rambam than in this case. How could you say that karbonis is the answer to idol worship? Adam Rishon brought karbonis. There was no pagans. And on it goes. But the Rambam writes, and I gave a whole shiur on it, I don't want to repeat what I said, you can get the tape, that karbonis was an answer to Avodah Zarah. Since Jews were stuck in idol worship, to help rehabilitate them, the Eibishter said, this I'm not going to allow you, but this I'll permit. So the Al-Sheikh says, the Eibishter tells us the same thing 2 times. To teach us, number 1, don't use karbonis like the pagans did. But number 2, when a Yid brings a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash, it's not only to get away from paganism, it's a correct worship to the Eibishter. In other words, it's not only a negative, it's a positive as well. Look at the second paragraph. The reason I just mentioned on the left side at the top is in a Sefer of Echad Magdalim. You know who Echad Magdalim is? It's not Echad, it's Ho Echad HaMiyuchad. It's Mereinu Rabbeinu Moshe ben Maimon in the Sefer Meir HaNevuchim, who says that the reason for karbonis is to go away from idol worship. V'da'ateinu, who says the Al-Sheikh, I disagree with the Rambam, Shloi Nichtav Sham, that when the Rambam wrote it, it was written Rak l'shachech das ha'amoin, to soften the opinions of the masses. I don't believe for a minute, says the Al-Sheikh, that the Rambam actually believed it. V'hinei le'yibatzer mehareya tam ha'oma b'teira pei. Someone is going to say, what do you mean karbonos are not to go away from idol worship? It says in this parsha, Seiirim. The Rambam has a raya from a pasuk mefurish. You have to bring a carbon to the Eibishter and no longer to Avodah Zarah, which is an explicit raya to the Rambam's position that karbonos is lohaitzi me Avodah Zarah. Shemashetziva yizbarach laseis chayleim shlamim lavai, to take choil and make it Kedesh Ulasiram Bayid B'chol HaShedim. Skip 4 lines. Go to my vertical line. Al Kain Leman L'Yimadu Mikan. Since the Eibishter does not want us to make this mistake and to come away thinking that the only reason for karbonis is to rehabilitate ancient pagans. Amar hu Yizbarach L'Moshe, Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm going to say the exact same halacha a second time. The first time I told you the halacha, it was to take Yid away from Avodah Zarah. I'm repeating it again so you should know, chas v'sholem, to look at a carbon as going away from Avodah Zarah. It's serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'aleim teimar, kleimar, al yitu hashemim es devarai eila leimer. Do not allow those listening to me to say in error. Shetam sh'amarti l'chulin hu gamkin l'koch. Do not think that my only objection is the worship of idols. I tell you that if you take a carbon Lashem and shecht it outside the Beis HaMikdash, you chayav kares. If the issue is not to worship idols and to worship God, what difference if you worship God in this building or in that building? Is a siman and a rayeh that karbonos are not only going away from a negative, there's a positive. So according to the Alshich, the Torah repeats the same Parsha twice. The first time is as the Rambam says, that people should not continue the pagan worships, especially as the Gemara said, the lowly pagan worships, which has to do with dam and other abominations. They should be above it and bring their worship, their sacrifice only to one God. And then I want you to know, karbanos are sacred, they're holy. They're much, much more than going away from Avodah Zarah. This is the Alshich. And on page 13 you have a Chasam Sefer who says more or less what I was telling you, that, let's read it inside. Second line. People who worship angels and stars, taimim, the reason is it's wrong, but it's meaningful. What are you worshiping? Sheidim, Geruim Ha'anosh. Ve'imekabla mehem. Look at second line from the bottom. The Chasam Sefer is saying that the Torah is not stam describing an objection to Avodah Zarah. He's describing an objection to Avodah Zarah not only on the grounds that it's Hepech HaAchdos, but it's Hepech HaAdushis. Go ahead. Okay, lo achshav. Now, there's one problem with this class. It's a nice pshat class, but what are you walking away with? Okay, I was looking for an opportunity to teach you about Seiirim. A lot of people ran out before the sun went down, but okay, so he had a class. So what? Okay, different kinds of idol worship. The Zohar adds a kvetch to this whole story, which adds another quality to the ganze Maisa. The Zohar also, the Zohar I think is on page 5 or 6, page 6. This Zohar is quite long, and I did myself on my copy machine and my paper supply a favor. I only copied one page, but this Zohar goes on for several pages. But the relevant piece begins, let's say 4 lines from the top where I made my first arrow, and it goes to the very bottom of the page. You'll see the last 3 lines of this page are actually the next page. I cut and pasted. I wanted to push it consolidate. And he says more or less the same thing that we have said until now. He explains that he's talking about tshuva. The Parsha before was talking about the Zohar began with the Shiramas Mimamakim. The Eibishter was consulting, should he make people or should he not make people? And the Torah said he shouldn't make people, and tshuva said he should make people. And of course, one of the forms of tshuva is karbanos. So he starts talking about the Yina karbanos. It's Parsha Achrie Offering. It's our Parsha. Once he's talking about karbanos, a carbon you bring to the Eibishter, and he immediately mentions the idea of Zeh Yom Hazeh. That just like you have karbonos to keiches of kedusha to the Eibishter, you also have keiches of liyumas, and he brings that there's eser, in effect, eser kiss in the Misabur. There's 10 types of Seiirim. He says the lowest madreg of Seiirim, near the bottom of the page, is called Deira Shalamesa. Yeah, he lists 10 categories of Seiirim. I didn't count 10, I counted only 8. But the Rechentoy is 10 kinds of Ma'oinim, Kaifim, Menachashim, Chayver Chaver, Oiv, and Yedain. He lists 10 types of keches of kishif, which are associated with Seiirim. Okay? But then he mentions a very interesting thing. Tana Yitzchak, where I made my arrow. Tana Tachazi, come and see. Yitzchak Maksiv Bey. What does it say about Yitzchak? And the following, by the way, is going to offer another insight into why Seiirim are called goats, Seiirim. Vayigash Yainkev el Yitzchak Aviv Hayimushehu. Yainkev is dressed in what? In the hair of goats. And he approaches Yitzchak, and Yitzchak touches him, and he sees that he's hairy. Omar do lo yisadi ela mitala deshmaya de noked alada. This one is lacking. Tala, the Shmaya, the Nafak Alara, the dew of heaven which has to descend to the earth. He touches Yaakov Avinu, and he feels that he's hairy, And the allusion to Sheidim as Seiirim, according to the Zohar, is because of the hair, the wool on the backs of Sheidim. And hair shows on Klippa. Why does hair show on Klippa? Because hair is a very, very small, thin little tube. Hairs are hollow. And the tzimtzum of hair is so much that Klippa can draw chayas from hair. Just to connect it to last week's Parsha class, if you were here, for something to be a tzaras, according to Kabbalah, there's several steps. The first step is the chokhmah goes away. The second step is the blood goes away, it turns white, which means that not only there's no chokhmah, there's no bina. And then the third step is that it grows white hair. In Tzemach Tzedek, in Mitzvahs, Mitzvah, he explains it. What's the white hair? The white hair is the way Klippa draws from Kedusha. So if someone is lacking chokhmah, they're not yet tummy. If someone is lacking bina, they're not yet tummy. If after there's no chokhmah, there's no bina, the hair turns white, then it's tummy, because you're giving chayas to Klippa. So hair is a symbolism of chayas, which is so mitzumtzum, which is going away to Klippa. And that's why Sheidim are called Seiirim. Sheidim are called Seiirim, it's about the hair on the backs of the goats, or on the bodies of the goats. The idea that the chayas is so mitzumtzum, that it's nimshach l'makam she'ein eroi. And Yaakov Avinu was hairy. Now, of course, you know and I know that it wasn't Yaakov's hair. It was Esav's hair, yeah? Right? Yaakov was Ish Cholok. Yaakov didn't have a lot of hair. And Faket, he understands Yaakov was Kedusha. Kedusha was giving Chayas to Klip. So Yitzchak Avinu was giving Yaakov Avinu a bracha, which is going to envelop, which is going to embrace, which is going to protect, which is going to raise up even the madrega of hair, which Yaakov doesn't really have. And this is what the Zohar is saying. He gives him a bracha, which comes from such a high place, and it comes from such a high place so it can descend to such a low level that even from the shaitis, from the seidim, from the hair of Yaakov Avinu, there should not be a unique sachitzed. Right? I looked up the translation of the word. He is not lacking Ela mitala d'shmaya, only the dew of heaven, the noged al ara, which descends to the earth. Rabbi Yasi, as Rabbi Yasi, the umishmane haaretz, the kula birch. He includes also the fat of the land and all of his blessings. My timer begin the chomalei b'shaira. Yitzchak sees that Yaakov Avinu has hair. In other words, Yaakov Avinu has a shaykhas to the lowest madregas of Gashmias, from which there could be a uniquest achitzainim la seidim. Who knows? Maybe the translation of the word seidim shouldn't be goats. It shouldn't be demons. It should be hair. Perhaps. Amar lemevado. To make this umishmane haaretz itzrich. This too should become the shem and the fat, the good of the land, not the filth, not the klip of the land. The ha'izuha mahu the ara, because the only reason there could be filth is because it has to do with the land. But v'katala d'shmaya, when the dew of heaven, together with the megoda the ara, the megodim, the pleasantries of the earth, mischabran, join isaber ha'izuha, the filth will go away. Not that Yaakov is going to lose his hair, but that even the hair of Yaakov Avinu should be kedesh lahavaya, gadol yeh, kadesh yeh, peres ha'areshe, like by a nazir. A nazir wears hair, but the hair of a nazir is considered kedesh hakadoshim. It's holy. So the Zohar adds a new dimension to this shtickle and gives us an upside, a positive side. There's a phenomenon called Seiirim, which we translated based on the Gemara as being disgusting, based on all the Mefarshim as being shadim, and based on the Zohar means the place where Klippa meets Kedusha. But the Zohar says, "V'yitin l'chol likim mitala shamayim u'mishmani haaretz." Yitzchak is giving Yaakov a bracha, which if you think about it, Yaakov doesn't even need. Because the hair is not his, it's a goat's. But in the bracha that he gave him a koyach. Not to push away the sheidim. Not to worship the sheidim. But to bring the sheidim into Kedusha. That even that madrega, which is called Seiirim, should become Mishmane Haaretz and not Zuam Adiyara. Verstehst? So it starts out as an inyan von Avodah Zarah, as an inyan of disgust, as an inyan of Yinikas Achitonim, and then we find out that in the bracha that Yitzchak gave Yankov Avinu, he gave a koyach that this too should be raised up to the Eibishter. What is the key? The key is echad. Chas v'sholom, not to make divisions. Ultimately, the lowest also gets raised up, that even into the very lowest and the very, very bottom, but ain't narayin achtas Hashem.